it's all well and good debating whether he's good enough or not. I genuinely just don't think Dyche fancies him. We're getting a few questions on Patterson, Joe.
Yeah.
So I'll just read one out. I mean, Emma EFC, who regularly contributes to the streams, asking, but Jeanette Rainford says, Patterson has played for the under-21s, so why isn't he fit for the first team? Is it just that Dyche doesn't like him?
It's a really good question, and it's one that I think we'll probably learn a little bit more over the coming weeks. He hasn't just played for the under-21s; he's played 3 games for them now, and before the international break, he played 2 games in 5 days. Against Reading, against Wolves. So if his workload is clearly intensified, and I saw him when he was driving out of Finch Farm yesterday. He's had the international break on top of that, so it's 200. Well, he didn't play all 90 minutes, but for 3 games, a fortnight training with the first team, you'd think he'd probably be there or thereabouts. Now, I mean, there is probably, I think, with Patterson, there's the legacy of other injuries that you have to be concerned about. This is a player that he's a young lad, but his body has failed him on multiple occasions already. He's finished, I think, 3 seasons with Everton now, and he's finished every single one of them injured. So that has been a concern. Obviously, he needed surgery on his hamstring after it looked innocuous at the time. Didn't even start that game. I think it was the 6-0 drubbing at Stamford Bridge where he came on late on and then had to leave the pitch because of the hamstring issue. So there is probably an element of the fragility of his body and trying to find a way. And we saw this with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, a little bit under Dyche at the beginning of last season, trying to find a way to build him back stronger. And I think that there's a difference between how you approach someone like Patterson, who has had repeated injuries and quite dynamic injuries as well, obviously, to things like hamstrings, when we know that pace is a part of his game, bombing forward and things like that. Well, you have to have a bit of mind of the long term and how you're going to try and build him up so he can actually have a career in football where this doesn't keep happening. With Branthwaite, obviously, again, another young player, but he hasn't had a long history of serious injuries. That was his first one. The groin injury wasn't felt to be a particularly serious one. It's just a bit of a complicated one, which is why it kind of takes a bit of time to get back. Speaking to people in the game, obviously we know that Jared Branthwaite, one of the theories that I kind of saw emerge towards the end of the transfer window was perhaps that nobody moved for Jared Branthwaite, or perhaps Manchester United didn't put in a higher bid for Jared Branthwaite because he was injured at the time. There's concerns over that. My understanding is that the groin injury wasn't something that would have seen him kind of fail a medical at the time. It wasn't something that, obviously he wouldn't have been fit to play right then, but it wasn't something that anyone would have had long-term concerns over. It's just about kind of edging him there towards towards full fitness. And I think he had a little bit of a setback at the back end of the summer. There was a hope that he might be available for, if not the start, then very close to the start of the season. That didn't quite materialise, as we've seen. So I think with Branthwaite, I think they've been a little bit more kind of confident with him because he doesn't have the track record that Patterson has. But even with that, so you can see the quad injury that kept him out of Newcastle wasn't the same as the groin injury. But Everton, again, on that, perhaps got burnt a little bit by perhaps bringing him back a little bit early. So you can see it with different players. Separate to that with Patterson, I do also think the difference between, say, Patterson and Branthwaite is we know that Branthwaite's first choice when he's available. Patterson, there are huge question marks, I think, over how much Dyche rates him and where he fits into Dyche's plans. Dyche has, even when Nathan Patterson has been fit, Dyche has done an awful lot to not play him. How many times have we been there an hour and 15 minutes before kick-off, and you're sitting there and you think, well, Coleman's out and Garner's probably going to play in the middle, so this has got to be Patterson's time, and then you end up and it's Ashley Young, or this was a long time ago, and this was in Dyche's opening weeks, but I can remember the 0-0 draw at Crystal Palace in the season ended with Bournemouth, and Dyche played Mason Holgate at right back over a fully fit Nathan Patterson. I remember asking him after, and this was a game where Jordan Ayew tore Holgate to shreds. He got 2 yellow cards, got sent off. I remember asking what the full process behind that decision was at the time, and then he was saying, he basically said Holgate's distribution from deep is better, which just felt like a bit of a strange answer at the time, sticking a square peg in a round hole there just to try and, for some kind of more complicated tactical reason that well, it got shown up because Holgate, say, got sent off and had a terrible game, even though Everton kept a clean sheet in that. So I do think that there is a big question over Patterson and whether Patterson will ever be a serious part of a Dyche side. Obviously, he needs to get back to full fitness in order to do that. Hopefully he does. He should get the opportunity at some point this season if he is fit, because we know that as good as Coleman is, injuries do catch up with him. And we know that obviously James Garner faces at least a short period out, at least a period of time out now. And there's no Holgate in the squad, there's no Ben Godfrey in the squad. So whilst there's Ashley Young there, you would think Patterson will probably get an opportunity if he is fit. It's up to him to take it. But that's going to be an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it in the summer, and if say, for instance, Dyche, if Dyche doesn't get a new contract at Everton and a new manager comes in, I'd be really interested to see whether we saw a continuation of it, which suggests that maybe there's a belief at the club that the player isn't as good, or the injuries have taken an impact on him, or it's something else, or whether or not someone else comes in and gives him a lease of life. Because Lampard played him a fair bit when he could. Obviously, Coleman was injured, but he started the season that he started with Patterson. Patterson played well. He had a good start to the season, played really well in the 0-0 draw against Liverpool, and but then injuries always seem to catch up with him at the wrong time.
Yeah, no, I mean, just sticking with it then, Chris, we've had a comment here from Danny Morehouse. Patterson isn't playing again under Dyche because it's personal, since Dyche acted like the big man and Patterson didn't like the response. And didn't like Patterson's response. Would you, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I think that it's all well and good that we can do, I mean, we discussed this, didn't we, in the pod with Gav on Monday. It's all well and good debating whether he's good enough or not. I genuinely just don't think Dyche fancies him. The only thing really that's changed over the course of the past couple of months is that Patterson's been injured, and that's the only reason he's not being in the team. But as Joe mentioned there, it's a long season. He could get in, barring, injuries, etc., over the next couple of months. But is it a case of Dyche just doesn't fancy him? And obviously the incident that happened in Portugal a couple of months ago.
I don't know about that particular incident. As Joe says, it goes back a lot longer than before that. He wasn't picking him anyway. As we mentioned last season, Godfrey for a good old chunk of the second half of the season was in their natural centre back. For whatever reason, it seems that he just, for all that Sean Dyche in public says all the right things about Nathan Patterson, the proof's in the pudding in the terms of his selection or non-selection, in that, he's missed a lot of games for injury, but there's been many games, as Joe said, when he is available and he's not picked him anyway. It may well be a case of if there's another manager there next season that he gets an opportunity he won't get under the current regime, but it's on the one hand, like you say, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Dyche could feel like really vindicated in terms of how he's got him fit and firing again. The factory reset, as the player called it, went on to play 39 games, all comps last season. But all these injuries for Patterson, he just seem odd that we're still being told that he's very much on the road to recovery and needs his match programme. So does that mean more under 21 outings rather than a senior call up? I think we discussed it the other day. I think there are serious doubts while Sean Dyche is Everton manager, of just how much of a look in Nathan Patterson's going to get when he is fit.